for support and so forth after a divorce. May Allah Azza wa Jalla make it easy for everybody. So we have Sister Rumana Muhammed who's going to be chatting with us. Now, the Divorce Amendment Bill is a legislative proposal aimed at revising the existing divorce laws to better address the needs and the rights of all parties involved. And of course, she is the best person to tell us all about this. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Romana. Welcome back to Urban Women.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And Jazakallah, shukran for having me. It's always a lovely space to be in. Love the energy and I love the learning.
Alhamdulillah. Yes, we learn every day. And I think that's so important. Keep their brains alive. But especially in important topics like this, which affects so many lives. Divorce is critical. And of course, not just on an emotional and a mental capacity, but financially as well. So many things start to spiral out. And of course, we're going to be touching on that. So if you can tell us, what are the key changes proposed in the Divorce Amendment Bill?
Okay, so the first thing I want to just clarify, please, Razia, is the fact that this is not a bill. Remember, when the process of making law is that a bill has to pass through both the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. The National Council of Provinces protects the provincial interests. So Parliament has two houses in a sense, the National Council of Provinces and the National Assembly. And when a bill goes through to Parliament, it's passed by these two houses and then signed by the President, and it becomes an act of Parliament, in other words, a law of the land. So this divorce amendment then is not a bill, it's not a draft document any longer. It is part of our legislation because on May 9th of May 2024, our President signed this divorce bill into law. So we now call it the Divorce Amendment Act. Okay, so just to clarify, okay? Excuse me. And then in terms of your question, yes, there are key changes, especially for us as Muslim women. Historically, our law has not recognized our Muslim marriages, and therefore all the protections and the recourse that other communities have had, we haven't had. So this is definitely a step in the right direction, because Muslim women now can initiate divorce proceedings in our civil courts. And in terms of this new legislation, they don't have to wait any longer to get a confirmation of a talaq or a fasakh or a khula from the judicial bodies any longer. It allows for Muslim spouses to approach the courts for relief. And that's one very, very important impact or change for us. It then also allows for spouses to claim equitable redistribution of assets upon divorce. So what that means is that in many cases where we have situations where each partner owns separate assets. So especially when you're married out of community property, or in terms of Islamic law, if the arrangement in terms of that marriage is that each party retains their own wealth, then very often you find that the typical scenario of stay-at-home mom is not increasing her wealth. And so when you approach the courts will say, or even the ulama will say, sorry, you get nothing. But by approaching the courts now, through this process, the courts are going to take into cognizance all the value that you've put into that relationship. So that's we call it the invisible labor. And remember, this invisible labor we take for granted, but in terms of Islamic law, you are making a financial contribution in a space where you are not obliged to do so. So technically, your husband owes you that refund in terms of all the contribution you are making. Okay, so what's nice about this is that the courts now recognize that, and it allows for that compensation to be in place. And it also allows for forfeiture of patrimonial benefits. So in other words, yes, something may be owned by a particular person, and therefore the other partner is entitled to it. But based on the circumstances, the disgruntled partner can say, oh, hold on, you're not entitled to this any longer. So it's a forfeiture of rights. Okay? So those are some of the significant things that, I think have come about for us.
Yeah, it's so sad. I mean, when two people are getting married, alhamdulillah, they're willing to do everything, anything,
Yes.
and then It does get nasty when the divorce happens. And sometimes, as you just said, there could be a woman that's at home and that's, probably committed. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows why the marriage doesn't work out. But yes, you touched on some very valid points that I've never looked at from that perspective, alhamdulillah. So, Sister Romana, how will the Divorce Amendment Act affect spousal support and the division of assets then?
So then, just in terms of the legal protection, the fact that, as I mentioned, the courts are going to look at the contributions made, that invisible labor, the contributions of the stay-at-home mom, or the contributions made by partners who didn't need to contribute. Because very often, look at our scenarios. I mean, the economic climate is such that we are all forced to work.
Correct.
Most families cannot survive on just a single income.
Mm-hmm,
So we
mm-hmm.
find that women now are contributing towards that household. And when
Right.
there's a divorce, it's so easy for husbands. I know I'm just earmarking the husbands here, and I apologize for that. It's just, statistically, that's what happens. And of course, I want to just place on record there are many situations where circumstances are very different, right? But I mean, here, when you have the person, the wife who stays at home, it just allows that contribution, or even if you are contributing financially to the household, it recognizes that contribution at divorce. And I think that's critical. Yeah.
Wow. I think many women that are listening in probably feel some sort of self worth coming through here because you give, and maybe some of them would like to study and like to go further, but we do take our responsibilities at home so seriously. And how can we juggle so much? And then you ended up with in a divorce situation, ma'azallah, Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. And then what happens? A woman has to start from scratch. And then, of course, she has the kids to take care of, and so many other things come at play. We're going to say, so Allah Azza wa Jal make it easy for everybody. Due to time, we definitely want to chat more about this whole Divorce Amendment Act. And thank you so much for bringing in the legal jargon here to our awareness. What is your take home message for our urban women listeners this morning, Sister Romana?
I think very importantly, in terms of this act, we have to remember that this particular act gives recourse to legal proceedings from December 15th, 2014 onwards. Okay, so if you're struggling to get a divorce at the law of fasakh, okay, and your battle has been initiated pre 2014, okay, then this act doesn't cover you. But if your challenge has been from December 2014 onwards, then yes, you are covered. It allows for women who are struggling with their Islamic divorce to approach the courts. Yes, it is challenging emotionally because taking anything to court is emotional, but I think in circumstances that our judicial bodies, our ulama, don't have the ability to enforce decisions, it gives us a lot of relief that we are able to access the courts. Okay, it is costly to bear that in mind, especially when you're dealing with a difficult spouse on the other side. Okay,
Mm,
so remember, the law is always, I always say, the law is like it's a double-edged sword. You have these rights you have these rights, but you also have to bear in mind the challenges that could be posed, the sustainability. You have to be court or litigation ready. But for
mm.
those women who have the capacity, who have the financial ability, or where they know that they've got a strong case to make and they can recover those costs from their partners, I think this is a positive step in the right direction.
Very real statements and important, valid points that you brought out. Let us know everything is not hunky dory, as you said. It's not easy going to court, and people who are there, have been there, know that whole journey. And thank you so much. It's so wonderful connecting with you and sharing this, bringing this awareness through to us urban women. And we look forward to connecting with you again and learning much more
Sure.
from you, inshallah, in the future.
I may,
Until
sorry, I may just also advise, sorry, I know I'm taking up time. For those
sure.
women who don't have the financial strength to do this,
Mm-hmm,
there's the Legal Aid Board that provides legal services free of
mm-hmm,
charge. Okay,
mm-hmm.
you get certain pro bono organizations. Okay, I think it's important for us as the Muslim community to understand what our rights are. The fact that the Divorce Amendment Act is in place, the fact that we can access the courts. A lot of these departments they still haven't been trained about this. So it's important
Mm.
for us to do our homework and then approach them and force them, push them to assist you in this process. So, as much as I said, yes, you need to have money and you need to have emotional capacity and all of that, but there are other options, and you need to know that this does exist, and you're going to have to deal with certain institutions who aren't familiar with this.
That's
Okay,
correct. That's
that's my
correct. Well said, because something had happened to me, and I needed to go through the various processes, and I realized that wherever I went, whichever organization or company, whatever I needed to done, which was critical, right? And I won't mention the institutions. Then you realize that basically your help is limited to the amount of knowledge of that person that's assisting you with. So
correct.
very important point that you made. Thank you so much, Sister Rumana. We'll connect with you again, inshallah, in the future. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran. Take care.
Afwan, and that was Sister Rumana Muhammed. She's an attorney and she's chatting with us about something very important, the Divorce Amendment Act. So, yeah, it's a reality. Get to know everything, get to know your rights, get to know how the law is changing and how it's supporting you. But remember that it's all not great and roses. Everything does come with its bits of challenges. Allah shall make it easy for everybody. Quick break, and then I'm going to be back. I see lots of people have been trying to call because they want to win the Quran. We'll be back shortly. Urban Woman, sponsored by Vada Gold Gem Jewelers.